Recent satellite images have caught a disturbing sight in the middle of the northern Chinese desert. Between miles and miles of sand lies a series of mock-ups of a U.S. Navy aircraft carrier and other warships. It is believed that the fake vessels are being used to test a new, powerful weapon, the DF-21 missile, or carrier killer. The strange footage has many experts wondering whether China has built or is in the process of finishing an anti-ship ballistic missile designed to annihilate American Navy carriers. On November 7, 2021, the United States Naval Institute made a strange announcement. According to the satellite imagery company Maxar, several photographs showed that the Chinese military had just finished building mock-ups of U.S. warships in the middle of the desert. The satellite photographs, collected in late October by the private American company, show a full-scale outline of a United States Navy carrier and 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyer vessels, among other items. The large carrier mock-up appears to have a flat surface and to be devoid of islands, lifts, weapons, or any other details. Although the mock-ups do not contain metal, they are distinguishable as carriers due to their outline. The satellite photos do not show any impact points in any of the models, but the strange mock vessels, standing out like bullseyes in the surrounding Xinjiang desert, are believed to be used for missile target practice. The obtained images also include a 20-foot-tall rail system, complete with a ship-sized target painted on it, leading experts to believe that it could be used to simulate a steaming vessel. Missiles are commonly tested in remote areas like deserts by several armies worldwide. Although practicing strikes against at-sea targets offer more realistic conditions and outcomes for training crews, they also risk being perceived as a provocation by other nations. Analysis of other obtained satellite images from the Chinese findings shows that the carrier structure began development in the spring of 2019, going through several rebuilds and being substantially dismantled for an unknown reason in December of that year. The structure, however, came back to life in September of 2021 and was complete by early October, only 2 weeks before the publication of the photos. Still, this newly built range shows that China continues to focus on its anti-carrier capabilities with a clear emphasis on American Navy warships. Aircraft carriers and destroyer vessels assigned to the U.S. Navy's 7th Fleet operating in the Indo-Pacific region routinely patrol waters near China, usually carrying out military exercises or freedom of navigation operations, all of which often anger Beijing. The Xinjiang desert base discovered by Maxar is not the first of its kind. As far back as 2003, a sizable concrete-based pad, roughly the size of an aircraft carrier, has been used as target practice for the Chinese. The slab, part of the Shuangshenzi missile test range, has been used many times since and is frequently repaired. However, the new base is much more evolved, and the new ship targets are closer approximations of the ships they are supposed to represent. According to the all-source analysis summary of the occurrence, the mock-up's extensive detail, including the placement on sensors in and around the model vessel, signals that the area is intended for multiple uses over time. China has a remarkable ability to conduct missile strikes against its adversaries, especially in its never-ending regional conflicts, and their anti-ship missile programs are led and overseen by the People's Liberation Army Rocket Force. Renamed in 2016, the force has been in service since the Cold War. The photographed site is near a former target range, where China used to test different kinds of intermediate-range anti-ship ballistic missiles, including DF-21, first released in 1991, and the DF-26, released only a couple of years before the discovery of the base. Often nicknamed carrier killer by its critics, the DF-26 is one of the most substantial assets of the People's Liberation Army Rocket Force, or PLARF arsenal, and can also be used for both strikes against land-based targets and naval vessels. The missile's accuracy data, however, remains unclear. As stated by the latest Department of Defense report on China's ever-growing military might, the carrier killer missile, quote, gives the PLARF the capability to conduct long-range precision strikes against ships, including aircraft carriers, out to the Western Pacific from mainland China. In July of 2019, the People's Liberation Army Rocket Force first conducted a live-fire launch of 6 of their carrier-killer ballistic missiles into the waters north of the Spratly Islands. And in addition to these missiles, China's army also created air- and ship-launched anti-ship missiles that could be employed in a combat scenario. When asked about the photographed mock-ups in the northern desert, Wang Wenbin, a spokesman for the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, stated that he was unaware of the situation. The released photographic evidence came amidst growing concerns over a possible military conflict between the world's two largest economies. 2 years later, in November of 2021, the Pentagon released a report stating that China was expanding its nuclear arsenal force much faster than once anticipated by Washington a year ago. As stated by the report, quote, "The People's Liberation Army rocket force's evolving capabilities and concepts continue to strengthen China's ability to fight and win wars against a strong enemy, a likely euphemism for the United States." The report seems to hint that Beijing will match or even surpass the United States' global power in just a few decades. The document also points to efforts by the PLARF to make their test training more realistic. The rising military upgrade from China in recent years has been increasingly concerning to the United States Army, especially as tensions between the two nations over Taiwan, the South China Sea, and military dominance in the Indo-Pacific remain high. Many experts believe that these mock-ups clearly reflect China's efforts to build anti-carrier capabilities, particularly against American vessels. In addition, the photographic evidence of the new target practice base comes amid concerns over Taiwan, the autonomous republic island claimed by Beijing, which has been threatening to annex it by military force. This island is provided with most of its weaponry by Washington, as U.S. state law requires that the country must ensure Taiwan can defend itself, thus treating any threats as a matter of grave concern. Due to the ongoing situation, U.S. officials are increasingly wary of China and its military intentions. In the past years, there's been an immense increase of Chinese aircraft and vessels in the skies and seas around Taiwan, concentrating them in the South China Sea, a strategic waterway that Beijing claims in its entirety. Meanwhile, the United States and its allies are trying to be ready by stepping up naval patrol in an effort to deter Beijing from taking action and gain control of the island. Even though the U.S. Navy remains predominant in the area thus far, its vast resources are divided between the Indo-Pacific, the Persian Gulf, the Mediterranean, and many other places of interest to Washington. Neighboring countries are highly concerned about China's desert and water missile testing. However, Secretary of State Antony Blinken has consistently said that the United States will make sure to defend the Philippines if it ever comes under attack through the South China Sea, and has warned China to cease its provocations. Still, the powerful nation continues to deny the testing. Despite the growing concerns, several experts still believe that China is far from creating an accurate anti-ship ballistic missile. Colin Coe, a research fellow at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies, concluded that the captured desert targets are not the final stage and will undergo many more secret tests for further refinement in the future. Tensions in the South China Sea between China and the United States have significantly escalated due to American support for maintaining Taiwan's independence. In response, China has steadily increased its aerial presence in the region, deploying multiple J-16 squadrons, and more notably, ramping up production of its most advanced fighter jet to date, the J-20 Mighty Dragon. The J-20 is a direct competitor to the American F-22 and F-35 stealth aircraft, which are operated by South Korean and Japanese allies. Although the J-20 has been deployed in the Pacific since 2017, there has been no recorded encounter between it and the F-35, until now. In March of 2022, the U.S. Air Force confirmed the first contact between the two aircraft. China followed in August of 2022, although neither side released footage of the encounter. However, in January of 2023, China published a propaganda video that, according to some analysts, finally included footage of the dramatic initial encounter between two of the world's most formidable aircraft. The increasing close encounters between American, Japanese, and South Korean aircraft with Chinese fighters in the Pacific are far from coincidental. Political and military tensions between the United States and China have intensified dramatically since Russia's military intervention in Ukraine in February of 2022. China's persistent threats towards Taiwan, a small island nation that the Chinese regime regards as its own, have further strained relations with the United States and its allies. In addition to this precarious situation, North Korea recently launched an intercontinental ballistic missile as part of its ongoing tests and displays of force. China has also accelerated the construction of artificial islands to bolster its unfounded claims of defending its national borders. These threats prompted the South Korean, Japanese and American air fleets to increase the number of fighter aircraft stationed in the Pacific to counter potential Chinese or North Korean aggression. But the Allied forces are not merely deploying any type of aircraft. They're replacing the aging F-15 Eagle with the more advanced F-22 Raptor fighter jets. The U.S. Pacific Air Forces reported in November 2022 that F-22A Raptors arrived at Kadena Air Base in Japan, straight from Alaska. The Japanese and South Koreans also employ F-16 fighters and the formidable F-35 Lightning II fighters to patrol their airspace. Despite possessing the world's most advanced stealth and air superiority aircraft, the United States anticipates losing air superiority to China by 2035. This projection has spurred China to increase the production of its most powerful aircraft to date, the J-20 Mighty Dragon. During an Air Force Association meeting in September of 2021, USAF Chief of Staff General Charles Brown Jr. announced that the Chinese People's Liberation Army possessed the largest aviation forces in the Pacific, having expanded significantly under the watchful eyes of the U.S. forces in the region. General Brown even asserted that China would surpass U.S. air superiority by 2035. Lieutenant General S. Clinton Hindle, Deputy Chief of Staff, also expressed concern that the USAF was gradually falling behind the PLA in some crucial aviation-related areas. These opinions from the generals aligned with previous statements made by the Pentagon, which has concluded that the Chinese Navy now boasts the largest naval fleet in the world and will soon threaten the U.S. Navy over control of the Western Pacific. Although the U.S. and its Pacific allies operate some of the most advanced aircraft in the world, including the F-22, F-35, F-15EX, and F-16, the PLA is quickly catching up, with an alarming production rate of J-20 stealth fighters and J-16 multi-role fighters. According to 2021 statistics, China is credited with producing over 150 J-20 stealth fighters. In contrast, the USAF has more than 280 Lockheed Martin F-35As, but the Pentagon has scaled down its budget. The Chinese J-20 is a fifth-generation stealth fighter, akin to the Russian Su-27, the American F-22 Raptor, and F-35 Lightning II. Analysts believe that China will employ the J-20 for long-range engagements, using a sniping mode where it will knock out enemy aircraft from a distance. During a conference held at the Mitchell Institute for Aerospace Studies, Kenneth Wilsbach, the commander of the Pacific Air Forces, suggested that China's key airborne early warning and control platform, the KJ-500, may be used to help the J-20 target hostile aircraft from afar. The KJ-500 also features a 3-panel active electronically scanned array radar housed in a fixed radome above the fuselage. This platform will enhance the effectiveness of the PL-15 long-range air-to-air missile used by the J-20 and the J-16 multi-role aircraft. The J-16 entered service in 2016 and was designed to be the ultimate companion to the J-20 alongside the J-10C. One of its latest variants, the J-16D, was built for electronic warfare. Introduced in late 2021, it's been spotted several times in Taiwan's Air Defense Identification Zone. Eric Higginbotham, a research scientist from MIT's Center for International Studies, stated that China has made the J-16 the ideal aircraft for interception missions. Moreover, it's being produced in large quantities, which concerns the U.S. and its Pacific allies. In an interview with South China Morning Post, Chinese Air Force equipment specialist Fu Chunshao asserted that the military is ready to replace older generation aircraft, such as the J-7 and J-8, with the J-16 and J-20 to counter the United States. China's military policy has become increasingly aggressive in the past 6 months, particularly concerning violations of Taiwanese airspace. The mass production of the J-20 stealth fighter jet has prompted many specialists to speculate about how the aircraft could compete against the F-35. While both are stealth fighters, they possess different capabilities and serve distinct roles. Lockheed Martin's F-35 Lightning II is a single-engine, single-seat, all-weather stealth aircraft designed for strike and air superiority missions. It boasts enhanced capabilities for electronic warfare, intelligence gathering, reconnaissance, and surveillance. There are 3 variants of the aircraft: the F-35A, a conventional takeoff and landing aircraft, the F-35B, a short takeoff and vertical landing aircraft, and the F-35C, a carrier-based aircraft. In contrast, the Chengdu J-20 Mighty Dragon is also a multi-role stealth fighter aircraft designed for long-range engagements for its air superiority role and ground missions. Like the F-35, it can operate under all-weather environments and can reach higher altitudes at supersonic speeds due to its delta wings. Apart from this information, not much else is known about the J-20. However, the situation changed when the US and China confirmed that the two opposing aircraft had their first ever encounter over the South China Sea in early 2023. In March of 2022, General Kenneth Wilsbach confirmed that F-35 stealth fighters had made contact with Chinese J-20 jets for the first time. This acknowledgement came just a month after an F-35 crashed in the South China Sea, raising concerns about the potential theft of this advanced technology by China. Although the general did not reveal when or where the encounter occurred, he discussed how the Chinese stealth fighter operates. In a press release from the Mitchell Institute for Aerospace Studies, General Wilsbach stated, quote, "It's a bit early to say what they intend to do with the J-20, so really all we've seen it do is air superiority. But we noticed that they're flying it pretty well. We recently had, I wouldn't call it an engagement, but where we got relatively close to the J-20s along with our F-35s in the East China Sea, and were relatively impressed with the command and control associated with the J-20. General Wilsbach also acknowledged the professionalism of the J-20 pilots, but admitted that the USAF does not have much information about the Chinese aircraft to form an opinion about its roles or performance. He explained that they had indeed observed fairly skilled flying, but that it remained premature to determine the exact purpose of the J-20, or whether it will resemble the F-35 or be more akin to the F-22, which primarily serves as an air superiority fighter with air-to-ground capabilities. Furthermore, the general emphasized the critical role the KJ-500 plays in the J-20's air supremacy capabilities, pointing out that, quote, "The KJ-500 plays a significant role in some of their capability for long-range fires. Some of their very long-range air-to-air missiles are aided by that KJ-500. Being able to interrupt that kill chain is something that interests me greatly." Though the Chinese acknowledged the encounter in August of 2022, it took over a year for the Chinese Air Force to release footage relating to the first contact between the J-20 and the F-35, or at least, that's what some Western analysts believe. In January of 2023, a government-affiliated news broadcaster released a video featuring a J-20 squadron, focusing on the patrols conducted by Chinese pilots over the East China Sea. During one of the brief segments interspersed between interviews with J-20 pilots, Chinese aircraft are seen flying above the skies. While no foreign aircraft are visible in the video, analysts believe the footage is authentic and may be closely related to the first encounter with an American F-35. The reason for the absence of specific footage of the encounter from the United States or China remains unclear. Nonetheless, the South China Morning Post titled its story about the video with a suggestive heading that hinted the footage was related to the rare encounter with the F-35. In any case, it's almost certain that encounters between J-20s and F-35s will become more frequent in the future. As China rapidly increases production of its most powerful jet to date, and the US, Japan, and South Korea intensify their patrols to protect friendly airspace, clashes or interceptions are likely to occur sooner rather than later. During the last few years, the friction between China and Taiwan has been constantly increasing, but the former has carried out a form of gray zone war that is not precisely subtle, yet not violent either. In order to weaken its enemy down, massive Chinese dredging vessels have been trespassing into Taiwanese waters since 2017, and the tiny country has been forced to come up with creative solutions. Footage taken in 2020 shows how a Coast Guard boat sprays water on an intimidating sand dredger, as the Chinese have been stealing Taiwanese sand from the ocean floor while determined to take back their former territory, even if it is one grain at a time. A collection of islands called Matsu lie 20 kilometers away from the Chinese coast. The islands hold a population of 13,000 inhabitants, and they are no strangers to war. For over half a century, the People's Republic of China and the Republic of China, or Taiwan, have been at war, but tensions had not been as high as they currently are. In the aftermath of the Chinese Civil War, the islands of Matsu were on the front lines of the dispute because of their proximity to the Asian giant. After losing the war to Mao Zedong's communist forces, nationalist leader Chiang Kai-shek fled to Taiwan. Forced to rebase his government on the island along with his troops, the defectors also took control and fortified the Matsu and Kinmen Islands, while the Communist Party established their People's Republic on the mainland. The two leaders vowed to take back the so-called Other China, and from 1958 to 1979, both sides attacked each other through propaganda or artillery shelling. Today, China still doesn't recognize Taiwan as an independent country, and the superpower has resorted to tactics more akin to the new millennium rather than outright war. As early as 2017, the Titans secretly sent enormous vessels to trespass Taiwan-controlled waters. Taiwan's Coast Guard registered 2 of them that year, then 71 in 2018, and up to 600 in 2019. But in 2020, about 4,000 Chinese ships intruded the so-called gray zone. Taiwan ships don't go over 100 tons, while some of the Chinese ones reach 3,000. Still, despite the Guard's best intent and effort to safeguard the livelihood of Matsu's inhabitants, the Chinese ships are on a mission. Not content with merely harassing the Taiwanese, in mid-2020, China started non-combative tactics to wear down its opponent. The Chinese ships are specialized sand dredgers that furtively steal the sand from Taiwan's ocean floor. Starting in June, swarms of ships revolved around Matsu, defiantly scooping tons of sand and ferrying them back for construction projects in China. Such irregular operations aim to exhaust a foe without open violence, but the Taiwanese have already responded. Available footage shows that the Coast Guard answered the Chinese intrusion by spraying a dredger with a water cannon. After the video was shot in late 2020, frictions have only risen, both regionally and internationally. Not for nothing, a statue of Chiang, located at the entrance of the main island of Nangan, reads, quote, "We sleep with our weapons by our pillows." Water cannons aside, Taiwan is currently in the process of reinforcing its Coast Guard. President Tsai Ing-wen has already commissioned the first so-called aircraft carrier killer, and the Coast Guard's new class of vessels will serve as missile boats for the Navy. The president also stated in December of 2020 that over 100 new boats will be built throughout the next decade as part of his country's no-mercy approach against Chinese dredging. Constant patrolling will still be crucial, and large patrol boats were sent to reinforce Matsu's Coast Guard in 24-hour shifts. In 2020, Taiwan impounded 4 Chinese ships and detained 37 crew members, of which 10 were sentenced to at least 6 months in prison. However, in their effort to repel the Chinese lashing, the civilian-run Coast Guard administration is being worn down, and the island's residents constantly suffer the consequences of the forays. These include the disruption of the local economy, the destruction of marine life in the surroundings, the intimidation of residents and tourists alike, and the wrecking of undersea communication cables. As the situation escalated in the frontier, the dredgers damaged important communications cables between the Nangan and Zhejiang Islands at least 5 times in 2020. Backed by the state, Tsinghua Telecom spent about $2 million fixing the infrastructure. Moreover, it had to hire a local boat to conduct daily patrols and ensure the safety of the cables. Mobile phone and internet services were also hampered, much to the outrage of the islanders. In fact, the people of Matsu dread a Chinese invasion. Chen Kuo-chiang, the owner of a restaurant in Nangan, spoke for his people when he said, quote, "We don't want to be ruled by mainland China. We have freedom, which is limited over there." The remnants of war are still visible across the islands. On Nangan Island, one can find anti-communist slogans on the cliffs or even air raid tunnels. However, Matsu has become a popular tourist destination, with its picturesque appearance and old stone houses refurbished into stylish guest houses. Matsu's local Coast Guard has sporadically required backup from mainland Taiwan, especially given the steep increase of dredger sightings. During the first 4 months of 2021 alone, the Taiwanese expelled 94 ships from their waters. According to the guards, most Chinese vessels have been spotted heading towards Wenzhou while fully loaded. Reportedly, the city has an ongoing land reclamation project, and the massive plot has been publicized by the local government. The so-called Au-Fei project has reclaimed a 66 square kilometer area, twice the extension of the Matsu Islands, for a new economic zone. Wenzhou's government described the enterprise as a, quote, "major strategic development for the future." However, the local authorities have not made any further statements. In the meantime, Taiwan faces a difficult decision. Li Wen, head of the local chapter of Taiwan's ruling Democratic Progressive Party, stated, quote, "If Taiwan fails to respond, then we allow the destruction of our environment and infrastructure. But if Taiwan responds with military force on civilian dredgers, then it gives China an excuse to escalate tensions." Still, China doesn't recognize democratic Taiwan's sovereignty and considers it part of its territory. The superpower has never renounced the use of force to take back control of the so-called rebels, if necessary. Indeed, the residents of Matsu argue that the focus has shifted, and the Chinese military might bypass the islands altogether and aim for the mainland instead. It is widely believed that China would need to attack quickly so that the US doesn't have enough time to meddle. Furthermore, China-US relations have also worsened, for Washington has openly supported Taiwan. In unprecedented fashion, America has even had high-level visits to the island, much to the chagrin of the Chinese government. Nevertheless, the Taiwanese have devised resourceful ways to cope with the dredgers. As civilian Lin Meihao put it, quote, "We do have some experiences to share, in particular how to face pressure from China in the form of civilian boats instead of military ones. We have such a diverse toolbox, since no single method is sufficient when you're coping with all these 2,000-ton beasts that are intruding into our waters. It's a David versus Goliath situation." Only time will tell how the complex situation evolves and whether China will continue pressuring Taiwan with such an unconventional approach. From the tethered observation balloons of World War I to the iconic Goodyear blimps, airships have graced our skies for over a century, offering unique points of view and performing crucial roles in surveillance. Then, in 2023, the concept re-emerged in the remote deserts of northwestern China, where a seemingly barren landscape harbors an enigmatic blimp floating in solitude. Captured for the first time by the gaze of orbiting satellites, this clandestine vehicle, an enormous military airship, lay concealed until very recently. Beyond its grandeur, the airship is located in a base with a colossal hangar spanning nearly 900 feet. The revelation of the Desert Titan's presence has sparked endless online conversation, with some hinting that China is on the precipice of a new age in airborne surveillance. And as the enigmatic story continues to unfold, the unsettling implications of China's latest skybound Titan come into focus. A stark desert landscape in northwestern China has become the focal point for an extraordinary revelation brought into the limelight by the never-ending gaze of orbiting satellites. Captured by the American satellite imaging company Black Sky in November 2022, a series of images expose a clandestine treasure, a larger-than-life Chinese military blimp. Released to the public by CNN in the spring of the following year, the photographs portray the solitary figure, perfectly centered on an over half-mile-long runway that yields its own secrets. Along its approximately 100-foot length, a distinctive pivot point discloses its purpose, a launching pad for the airship. However, the images reveal more than just the massive blimp. Amidst the sprawling desert, an even more colossal structure casts an imposing shadow. The airship's hangar itself, a mammoth structure spanning nearly 900 feet. From the depths of northwestern China's desert to the global stage, these images have sent ripples through the world, raising more questions than they answer. Declining to divulge details, a high-ranking Defense Department official asserted to CNN that they are tracking the object. Still, many wonder if the Chinese blimp was a surprise to Western officials as well. Unveiling the hidden Chinese military blimp ignited a wildfire of speculation and discussions among experts and online sleuths alike. The sheer size and unique design of the airship piqued the curiosity of William Kim, a surveillance balloon specialist at the Marathon Initiative, a non-profit military research organization who postulated that the mystery craft might be a testbed for groundbreaking technologies. Unraveling the enigma further, Jamie Jacobs, an expert from the Oklahoma Aerospace Institute, added a surprising perspective. Drawing on his experience, he suggested that the airship could function as a submarine of the skies, hinting at the blimp's capacity to linger over specific regions for prolonged periods, heightening the intrigue around its potential role in surveillance. The online community, weaving endless threads of theories, dissected all possibilities while experts tried to connect the dots, scrutinizing every pixel of the available satellite images to find more clues. Eli Hayes, a researcher who has studied the Chinese airship program for years, seemed to come closer to solving the mystery, noting that the blimp's appearance at a Chinese military facility marked a notable transition. Because past Chinese airstrips have previously been constructed by research institutions and universities, the location confirmed the blimp was not just a civilian effort anymore. The location where the images were taken is the Xinjiang base, a hub shrouded in secrecy and conjecture. First sighted in satellite footage over a decade ago, the base, also known as Korla or Bohu, is suspected of playing a significant role in China's strategic ambitions. Online analysts suggest the location is instrumental in developing cutting-edge technologies such as anti-satellite lasers and high-powered microwaves. In 2013, the People's Liberation Army erected the 900-foot hangar at this enigmatic location. This hangar, according to researchers, is too large for the airship. Yet, for years following its construction, the structure sat in seeming isolation, with its presence barely acknowledged by the surrounding area's sparse activities. As seasonal snow blanketed the landscape, a near absence of activity suggested the hangar was mostly dormant. This isolation, however, would soon prove deceptive. Fast forward to 2020, when a peculiar cradle-like structure emerged on the base's runway, measuring roughly 400 feet long and 160 feet wide. Coupled with the expansive dimensions of the hangar, new theories about the presence of larger, unseen aircraft abounded. Further adding to the intrigue is a reorganization within the Chinese military structure, as patents related to airship technologies have recently been reallocated to a new unit, PLA Unit 63660. According to Eli Hayes, one of the patents in that unit resembles the colossal cradle on the runway. This detail, discovered by Hayes during his review of Chinese patents, hints at a more centralized and focused approach to advancing airship technology. The most telling sign of China's airship ambitions, however, is the escalation in activity at the base. Satellite imagery provided by Black Sky has documented the emergence of subterranean excavations and foundation pouring. The hangar complex, too, is noticeably expanding its footprint. As the Xinjiang base continues to grow, so does the intrigue surrounding it. Moreover, its quiet emergence from isolation to activity suggests preparation for something significant that could change the landscape of global power. While the intent behind these developments remains speculative, some suggest that the November 2022 appearance of a truly large airship cements the commitment of the PLA unit to its airship program. Unsurprisingly, the recent exposure of a colossal Chinese military blimp, well concealed within the barren Chinese desert landscapes, has set off waves of intrigue across the global stage. This revelation coincided with an unexpected incident, the downing of a lone spy balloon off the coast of South Carolina in early 2023. The timing of these two incidents is far too consequential to dismiss, and the sequence of events has thrust the potential espionage implications of China's airship program into the spotlight, igniting speculation and heightening international concern. The downing of the spy balloon unveiled the strategic potential of airships for surveillance and espionage, spotlighting China's airship program. The Chinese military blimp, an aerial behemoth potentially capable of stealthy, prolonged surveillance, presents a new set of strategic implications. Its capabilities could equip China with unrivaled capacity for intelligence gathering. In fact, a 2018 report by the Rand Corporation highlighted the cost-effectiveness of airships and their ability to provide more precise intelligence than satellites. Capable of operating at altitudes far less susceptible to destruction, airships offer a safer and economically viable option for reconnaissance missions. Although China is not alone in utilizing airships, as the United States military has used aerostats before, this discovery now confirms the People's Liberation Army program now uses all three types of airships: blimps, aerostats, and free-floating balloons, seemingly confirming the country's commitment to advancing its airship program. Despite the conspicuous silence from the Chinese government, which has refused to comment on the airship, the international community is unlikely to let this development slide into oblivion. The blimp sighting at a military facility, marking a significant shift from civilian to military technology and research, escalates the discourse surrounding China's airship program. No longer a subject of mere academic curiosity, airships could soon pose a tangible and critical concern for international security.